There is a specific feeling that finds you exactly 3 steps before your life changes forever. It isn't peace, and it isn't excitement. In fact, it's a sensation so strange that most people mistake it for a total psychological breakdown. Carl Jung, after decades of studying the ancient art of alchemy, realized that this wasn't a failure of the mind, it was the arrival of the rubedo. The rubedo is the red stage. It is the final phase of the alchemical great work where the base lead of your suffering is finally transmuted into the gold of your destiny. But here is what they don't tell you. For the gold to appear, the fire must reach its highest temperature. If you are feeling a burning in your life right now, a sense that your old bridges are being incinerated and your old self is melting away, you aren't being punished. You are in the crucible. Jung noted that right before a winning season, the psyche stops trying to fix the past and starts preparing for a future that the ego cannot yet see. This is the finding. It's a sudden, unshakable conviction that the external world is no longer in charge of your joy. You feel a sovereignty that makes you dangerous to your old limitations. Today, we are going deeper than basic mindset shifts. We are looking at the blood-red sign that proves your waiting is over. Because the version of you that kept doubting itself is collapsing. The version that lived for approval is collapsing. The version that stayed loyal to fear is collapsing. And the terrifying part is that once this process begins, it cannot be reversed. You start seeing through everything, through fake ambition, through empty validation, through the habits and people that kept your spirit small. That is why your old life suddenly feels emotionally dead. Your psyche already knows what your eyes cannot see yet. You are outgrowing an entire reality. This is what happens before the breakthrough, before the elevation, before the season that changes everything. Not motivation, not certainty, transformation. And transformation is violent before it becomes beautiful. So if your life feels like it's burning right now, don't mistake the fire for destruction. Some fires do not come to ruin you. Some fires come because there is gold inside you that refuses to stay buried any longer. In the quiet, shadow-filled corridors of the human psyche, there exists a character we all know too well, the underdog. We have been conditioned by 1,000 movies, religious myths, and cultural narratives to love this version of ourselves. The underdog is noble, the underdog is trying, and the underdog is always just one lucky break away from the finish line. But Carl Jung, in his most provocative observations on the nature of the self, issued a silent, devastating warning. If you do not kill the underdog within you, your winning season will never arrive. It is not enough to outwork your competition. You must outgrow the version of yourself that needs a comeback story to feel validated. Why is this so difficult? Because the underdog is not just a role you play, it is a sophisticated ego attachment. It is a psychological identity built entirely on the foundation of lack. Jung observed that the human ego is incredibly crafty. It would rather be miserable and certain than great and unknown. For years, you may have subconsciously derived your entire sense of self from the struggle itself. You became the person who works harder than anyone else but never gets the credit. You became the one who is misunderstood by family and peers. You became the resilient survivor of constant setbacks. While these traits feel virtuous and even heroic on the surface, Jungian analysis reveals they are a sophisticated prison. They require a losing season to exist. Think about the psychological physics at play. You cannot be a survivor unless something is actively trying to kill you. You cannot be misunderstood unless the world is fundamentally against you. By clinging to the identity of the underdog, you are, without realizing it, placing a standing order with the universe for more obstacles, more haters, and more near misses, just so you can continue to feel like the protagonist of your struggle. The finding that occurs right before your winning season is the sudden, violent realization that you have been your own jailer. As you approach the threshold of your breakthrough, you start to notice a psychological nausea regarding your own story. Suddenly, the words, "I'm trying," taste like ash in your mouth. You stop wanting sympathy from your friends. In fact, you start to despise the very people who try to comfort you in your stagnation. You realize that their comfort is the glue keeping your old, failed identity together. This is the death of the underdog. It is a literal execution of a version of you that required the world to be unfair in order to feel special. Jung's process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your true, whole self, demands that we integrate our shadow, but it also demands that we shed our persona. The underdog is one of the most seductive personas in existence. It is a mask we wear to explain away our lack of results while maintaining our moral high ground. We tell ourselves, "I'm not successful because I'm too honest, or because I don't play the game, or because the system is rigged." While elements of that may be true, the moment you decide to enter your winning season, you must burn that mask. You have to be willing to be the villain in someone else's story if it means being the master in your own. When you enter the frequency of the winning season, trying is replaced by being. This is a fundamental shift in your internal architecture. When you identify as an underdog, your psychic energy is constantly radiating a signal of not quite there yet. You are looking up at your goals, placing them on a pedestal that makes them unreachable. But in the winning season, your goals must look up to you. You must occupy the throne of your own life before the external world ever brings you a physical crown. If you wait for the money, the fame, or the win to feel like a winner, you are still operating in the underdog's logic. You are still a beggar asking for a sign. This shift is terrifying because, without the underdog story, who are you? If you aren't the person struggling against the odds, you are simply the person responsible for the outcome. Most people flee from this responsibility back into the safety of the struggle. They choose the comfort of the waiting season because it protects them from the terrifying reality of their own limitless power. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." To accept yourself as a winner means you can no longer blame your parents, your boss, or the economy for your state of mind. It means you are fully, dangerously awake. Right now, if you feel a cold, detached indifference toward your past failures, if you find yourself unable to even recount your old sob stories because they feel like they belong to a stranger, then the underdog has died. You have stopped chasing the light and realized that you are the light source. This is what Jung meant by becoming transparent to the transcendent. You no longer need the drama of the struggle to feel alive. You have reached the tipping point of sovereignty. In this state, you are no longer asking the universe for a win. You are showing the universe that the win is the only logical outcome for the person you have become. You aren't finding your winning season. You are finally allowing it to find a version of you that is actually ready to keep it. The universe doesn't give you what you want. It reflects who you are. If you are an underdog, it gives you more under and more dog. If you are sovereign, it gives you a kingdom. The execution of the underdog is a silent affair. It doesn't happen with a bang, but with a quiet, firm no. A no to the people who want to keep you small. A no to the thoughts that tell you you aren't ready. A no to the addiction to your own pain. When that no becomes your default setting, the gates of your winning season swing open of their own accord. You realize that the only thing standing between you and the throne was your own desire to be the person who almost made it. As the underdog dies and the sovereign begins to draw its first breath, the physical world around you will undergo a transformation that Carl Jung described as the most significant indicator of a psychological breakthrough: synchronicity. But forget the pop psychology version of this concept. We aren't talking about seeing a white feather or a repeated digit on a clock. When you are on the precipice of a winning season, synchronicity isn't a coincidence. It is an objective meaning. It is the moment the universe stops being a cold, indifferent backdrop and starts acting like a mirror to your internal shift. Jung defined synchronicity as an acausal connecting principle. This means that an event happens in the outside world that perfectly matches an event in your inner world, yet there is no logical, cause and effect reason for them to be linked. Most people ignore these moments or brush them off as luck, but the sovereign knows better. These moments are the third eye of your destiny opening. They are the psychic glitches that prove you have successfully shifted your frequency from lack to abundance. When your winning season finds you, these synchronicities move from being subtle to being undeniable. Jung believed that the psyche and the material world are actually made of the same stuff, what he called the unus mundus, or the one world. Usually, our ego keeps these two worlds separate. We feel like we are in here, and the world is out there. But as you approach your breakthrough, that wall thins. You think of a person you haven't spoken to in 5 years who holds the key to your next business move, and 10 minutes later, they email you. You find a book in a coffee shop that contains the exact sentence you needed to solve a creative block. You overhear a conversation between strangers that answers a question you only asked yourself in the shower an hour prior. This is the universe handshaking with your new identity. Why does this happen now, and not during your struggle years? Jung's research suggests that synchronicity is attracted to high-intensity psychological states. When you were the underdog, you were in a state of static struggle, a repetitive loop of the same thoughts and same failures. There was no movement in your soul, so there was no movement in the world. But the moment you execute the underdog and step into your sovereignty, you create a massive psychic displacement. You have moved from a state of seeking to a state of knowing. This shift creates a vacuum, and the external world rushes in to fill it. In this stage, you must develop what Jung called symbolic sight. You have to stop looking at the world literally and start looking at it metaphorically. The winning season finds you when you realize that every person, every delay, and every accidental encounter is actually a piece of a larger mosaic. The third eye isn't about psychic powers. It's about pattern recognition. You start to see the secret order behind the chaos. You realize that the rejections of your past weren't walls. They were guardrails. They were the universe's way of keeping you on the path toward the specific win that matches your true self. But there is a warning here that Jung was very clear about. Do not chase the signs. The underdog is obsessed with signs because the underdog needs proof that things are going to be okay. The sovereign, however, is the proof. If you spend your day hunting for 1111 or looking for messages in every bird that flies by, you are still operating from a place of anxiety. You are still a beggar asking for a crumb of hope. True synchronicity finds you when you are so deeply immersed in your work, your passion, and your new identity that you almost don't notice the miracle until it's already happened. You become so aligned with your winning season that the wins start to feel normal. You don't scream with excitement when the big break comes. You simply nod, because you already saw it in your mind 3 months ago. Jung once treated a patient who was so stuck in her rational, underdog mind that she couldn't see any way out of her depression. As she was describing a dream about a golden scarab, an Egyptian symbol of rebirth, a real, physical golden scarab beetle began tapping at the window of Jung's office. Jung opened the window, caught the beetle, and handed it to her, saying, "Here is your scarab." That moment of objective meaning shattered her rational prison and allowed her winning season to begin. Your golden scarab is already tapping at the window. It might be a phone call, a random idea, or a sudden change in plans. The question is, are you still too busy mourning the underdog to open the window? When the third eye of synchronicity opens, you realize that the world isn't something you are fighting against. It is something you are co-authoring. The winning season isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a rhythm you finally fall into. As you move through this phase, your intuition will become your primary navigation system. You will feel pulls toward certain places or people without knowing why. Follow them. This is the acausal principle at work. Your unconscious mind already knows where the gold is buried. It is using synchronicity to lead your conscious mind to the dig site. The sovereignty of the winning season is marked by this strange, effortless flow. You stop hustling in the traditional sense and start aligning. You realize that 1 hour of synchronicity-aligned action is worth 1,000 hours of underdog grind. The world is bending. The patterns are aligning. The third eye is open. You aren't just watching the movie of your life anymore. You've realized you're the director, the writer, and the lead actor. And the script for your winning season has already been approved. As the synchronicities begin to peak, They are almost always followed by a phenomenon that Carl Jung identified as the most dangerous phase of human development: the absolute crushing silence. In the alchemical process he spent his life decoding. This is the nigredo, the blackening. But it is not a blackness of despair. It is a blackness of total potential. The finding that occurs here is the discovery of the void. This is a psychological no man's land where your old life has effectively died, but your new life has not yet begun. Most people fail here because the ego cannot tolerate a vacuum. They interpret this silence as a sign that they have made a mistake, that they are failing, or that they are being punished. In a panic, they attempt to fix the silence by resurrecting their old underdog problems just to feel a sense of identity again. But the sovereign understands that the void is the final requirement for a winning season. Jung observed that the psyche cannot inhabit two structures simultaneously. If you are to step into a life of massive scale and influence, the winning architecture requires psychological space that is currently occupied by the clutter of your past. The void is a literal eviction. This is why, right before your breakthrough, your social circle often collapses. Your old hobbies lose their flavor. Your very sense of self begins to feel like a ghost. This is the dissolution of the persona. Every relationship, habit, and thought pattern you developed while you were struggling was a hook that kept you tethered to a losing season. To move into the new frequency, those hooks must be severed. This creates a profound clinical isolation. You find yourself standing in the middle of your life, looking at your friends, your family, and your career, and realizing you no longer speak the same language. You are unplugged. This isolation is a biological and psychic necessity. Jung believed that the final stages of transformation must occur in solitude. As long as you are surrounded by people who know you as your old, struggling self, their expectations will act as a psychic gravity, pulling you back into the underdog role. They need you to stay small because your growth highlights their stagnation. The void is a psychological Faraday cage that protects you from their influence, allowing the emerging voice of your true self to finally be heard without interference. The winning season finds you in this silence because the win itself requires a level of internal stability that can only be forged in the dark. If you are feeling buried right now, it is because your future is massive. A skyscraper requires a foundation dug deep into the cold, silent earth. The taller the building, the deeper the hole. If you feel empty, it is because you are being hollowed out to hold more power. Most people are terrified of this emptiness. They fill it with busy work, distraction, or forced networking. They are trying to force the season to start. But Jung's secret was the power of active passivity. You do not fill the void. You endure it. You allow the silence to burn away the last remnants of your need for external applause. You become transparent to your own destiny. When you reach the center of the void, the anxiety stops. It is replaced by a strange, detached calm. You stop chasing the season and start occupying the space. You realize that the silence isn't a lack of sound. It's the absence of noise. For the first time in your life, you are no longer reacting to the world. You are simply waiting for the moment to act from your center. Jung noted that in alchemy, the blackness of the nigredo is always followed by the albedo, the whitening or the sunrise. But this light is different. It isn't the flickering candle of hope that the underdog carries. It is the steady, cold light of certainty. If you are in the void right now, if you feel lonely, disconnected, and strangely quiet, do not attempt to fix it. Do not call old friends to vent. Do not start new projects out of boredom. Sit in the silence. The winning season is a massive energy shift, and the void is the battery being charged. If you leave the silence too early, you will blow the fuse of your future. But if you stay, if you allow the great silence to finish its work, you will emerge not as someone who won, but as someone who is unbeatable. The void is the final test. It is the proof that you no longer need the world to tell you who you are. And the moment you truly accept the silence, the world will finally begin to speak your name. In the alchemical manuscripts that Carl Jung spent the final decades of his life decoding, there is a singular, terrifying requirement for the creation of gold. The lead must be melted. In the language of the ancients, lead is the metal of Saturn. It is heavy, dull, cold, and restrictive. It represents the boundaries of time, the weight of karma, and, most critically, the paralyzing sensation of fear. Most people spend their lives attempting to overcome fear, treating it as an external intruder that must be banished or healed. But Jung's most radical and disturbing discovery was that fear is not an obstacle to your winning season. Fear is the raw material of it. In alchemy, this is known as the prima materia, the first matter. The alchemists believed that you could not create gold out of nothing. You had to start with the basest, most despised substance available. For the modern seeker of a winning season, that substance is your own anxiety. When you stand on the precipice of a massive breakthrough, the fear you feel is not a warning to turn back. It is the psychological signal that you have finally encountered your lead. The underdog tries to pray the fear away, or waits for a moment of courage to arrive. The sovereign, however, understands that the very thing that terrifies them is the only thing with enough density to be turned into power. This is the process of metabolic authority. Jung observed that the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress because they are too aggressive, too ambitious, or too dark, is actually the reservoir of our greatest vitality. Right before your winning season, this shadow manifests as a vertigo of the soul. You aren't actually afraid that you will fail. You are afraid that you will succeed, and in doing so, you will be forced to become a person you no longer recognize. You are afraid of the golden authority that requires you to stop being nice and start being formidable. To transmute this fear, you must perform what Jung called shadow integration. You do not fix the part of you that is hungry for power. You harness it. Think of it like a nuclear reactor. Radiation is lethal if left uncontained, but when placed in the core, it powers an entire civilization. The winning season finds you the moment you stop trying to be a good person and start trying to be a whole person. A good person is predictable, easy to manipulate, and stays in their lane. A whole person has integrated their capacity for aggression. They don't use it to hurt others, but they use it as the psychological armor required to protect their win. Your authority is hidden inside your anxiety. When you feel that leaden weight in your chest, you must dive into it rather than fleeing. Jung noted that in the alchemical vessel, the heat must be constant. If you flinch, the lead cools and becomes even heavier. But if you stay in the tension, if you occupy the fear until it becomes familiar, the atomic structure of your psyche changes. You move from a state of lead, heavy, reactive, and burdened by the past, to a state of gold, radiant, non-reactive, and immensely valuable. The world recognizes this shift instantly. People who used to overlook you will suddenly feel a weight to your presence. You don't have to raise your voice. Your golden authority speaks for you. This is the frequency of the winning season. It isn't a lucky streak. It is the result of a human being who has finally stopped fighting themselves and started using 100% of their psychic energy for their own advancement. In this stage, you realize that your weaknesses were just unrefined strengths. Your social anxiety was actually a highly tuned sensitivity to environment. Your anger was actually a misplaced sense of justice and leadership. By melting these down in the crucible of self-awareness, you extract the gold. The winning season doesn't find a balanced person in the traditional sense. It finds a concentrated person. It finds someone who has taken all their trauma, all their fear, and all their repressed ambition and melted them down into a single unbreakable will. You are no longer waiting for the world to give you permission to lead. You have developed the internal sovereignty that makes external permission irrelevant. You aren't waiting for the lead to disappear. You are waiting for it to melt. And once it turns to gold, the world will have no choice but to pay you in kind. The sovereign does not ask for the crown. They are simply the only one capable of carrying its weight. In the final stages before a winning season manifests in the physical world, the most fundamental pillar of human reality begins to crumble: linear time. Most people live their lives according to the Chronos model, the ticking clock, the calendar, the slow, agonizing crawl from a past of mistakes toward a future of hope. But Carl Jung, through his study of the ion and the archetypal nature of the self, realized that the highest form of human consciousness does not exist within time. It exists as the source of it. When your winning season finds you, you experience what can only be described as a temporal collapse. You stop waiting for things to happen in the future and start realizing that the version of you who has already won is accessible now. This is the shift from becoming to being. Jung observed that the self, the central archetype of the psyche, is essentially extratemporal. It does not age, it does not wait, and it is not bound by the limitations of cause and effect. The underdog is a creature of linear time. He is always one day away from success, always almost there, always haunted by what happened 10 years ago. But the sovereign operates in the realm of the ion. In this state, the distance between an intention and its manifestation begins to shrink until it vanishes entirely. The finding that occurs here is the discovery that soon is a lie told by the ego. As you approach your breakthrough, you will feel a strange sensation that time is accelerating and standing still at the same moment. You might look at a goal that you thought would take 5 years to achieve and suddenly realize it could be done in 5 weeks. Or that, internally, it is already done. This is not delusion. It is the psychological alignment with the self. Jung taught that when the conscious mind aligns with the unconscious blueprint of destiny, the friction of reality disappears. The world stops feeling like a solid wall you have to hustle through and starts feeling like a fluid that responds to your internal state. The underdog is addicted to the future. He uses the idea of a future win to tolerate a miserable present. He says, "I'm suffering now so that I can be happy then." Jung viewed this as a form of psychological neurosis. It splits the soul into two pieces, a suffering now and a winning then. The winning season cannot find a split soul, can only find a whole one. To enter the sovereign state, you must execute the future as a concept. You must bring the energy, the authority, and the frequency of your winning season into the absolute present moment. If you are waiting for a bank balance to change before you feel powerful, you are still a slave to linear time. If you are waiting for an office or a title to feel like a master, you are still trapped in the Chronos loop. The sovereign realizes that the win is an internal state of gravity that pulls the external world toward it. This is what Jung meant when he spoke about synchronicity acting outside of time. In the ion, the end is present in the beginning. When you truly occupy your winning season internally, the physical world undergoes a quantum collapse. Opportunities that should have taken months to develop suddenly appear in an afternoon. People who were out of reach suddenly become accessible. It feels like the world is hurrying to catch up with the person you have become. Most people panic during this collapse. They feel a sense of temporal vertigo. They wonder, how can this be happening so fast? Or, I'm not ready for this level of expansion. This is the ego trying to drag you back into the safety of the slow, predictable underdog timeline. You must resist the urge to slow down. You must realize that you haven't skipped steps. You have simply removed the psychological resistance that was making those steps take so long. In the state of the ion, you no longer plan for success. You radiate it. Jung's work on the mandala, the symbol of the centered self, shows that everything moves toward the center. When you are centered in your own sovereignty, you are the gravity well of your own life. You don't go out to get your winning season. The winning season falls into you. This requires a radical trust in the unconscious timing. The underdog is always checking his watch, asking, when? The sovereign knows that when is a question for those who aren't yet who. Once the identity is fixed, the timing is irrelevant. You begin to live in what Jung called the eternal now, a state where you are so focused on the task at hand, so aligned with your internal power, that the concept of waiting becomes nonsensical. The winning season finds the person who has stopped looking for it, not because they gave up, but because they have already become the destination. The finding is the realization that there was never anywhere to go. The throne was always there. You just had to stop being a tourist in your own life and sit down. As linear time collapses, you will notice that your past also changes. The traumas and failures of your underdog years no longer look like mistakes. They look like strategic necessity. From the perspective of the sovereign, every losing season was actually a training simulation designed to build the specific psychological muscles required to hold the winning season. The time you thought you wasted was actually the time required to melt the lead. You are now standing at the intersection of your internal reality and the external world. The clock has stopped ticking. The future has arrived, not as a date on a calendar, but as a presence in your chest. The ion has opened. You are no longer a passenger in the vehicle of time. You are the driver. The winning season doesn't arrive on a Tuesday in October. It arrives the moment you decide that then is now. The wall between you and your destiny hasn't been broken down. It has been revealed as a shadow that never existed in the first place. You are not approaching your win. You are the win. The journey from the death of the underdog to the collapse of linear time leads to a singular, inevitable destination. Carl Jung called it the circumambulation of the self, but in the theater of your life, it is the moment you finally ascend the throne of the self. This is not a metaphor for ego inflation or arrogance. In fact, it is the exact opposite. To sit on this throne is to accept the absolute, cold responsibility for everything you are and everything you are to become. It is the final finding before the winning season transitions from a psychological state into a physical reality. Most people spend their lives standing in front of the throne, looking for someone else to tell them they are allowed to sit in it. They look for mentors, certificates, likes, or bank statements to act as the officiating priest of their own coronation. But Jung's entire body of work on individuation suggests that the only person who can crown you is the version of you that survived the void. The winning season is not a reward for good behavior. It is the natural consequence of a human being who has finally stopped seeking external permission. The finding at the center of the throne is the realization that the winning season is not an event. It is an internal atmosphere. When you sit on the throne of the self, you move from the seeking phase to the commanding phase. In the seeking phase, you were a hunter, out in the world trying to capture success. You were exhausted, reactive, and always looking over your shoulder. But the sovereign does not hunt. The sovereign attracts. Jung understood that the self is a center of gravity. When you are truly centered, when you have integrated your shadow, executed your underdog persona, and survived the silence, you become a psychic magnet. The winds you used to chase now begin to orbit you. This is the stage of effortless dominance. It is what athletes call the zone, and what the mystics call grace. From the outside, it looks like you are working harder than ever, but from the inside, it feels like you are doing nothing at all. You are simply allowing your nature to express itself. The friction of the ego, the part of you that worries about what people think or what if I fail, has been burned away in the alchemical fire of part 4. All that is left is the gold, a pure, concentrated stream of intentional action. However, sitting on the throne requires a final sacrifice. You must give up the right to be small. Jung noted that many people find the idea of their own greatness more terrifying than the idea of their own failure. Failure is familiar. It is a safe place where you are allowed to complain and seek comfort. But greatness is lonely. It demands that you hold yourself to a standard that no one else can see. It demands that you stop looking for relatability and start embracing your originality. On the throne, you realize that your winning season is unique to you. It won't look like anyone else's. It won't follow the standard path. You have integrated your unique genius, the daimon that Jung believed guides every individual toward their destiny. When you follow the daimon, you stop competing with others because you realize there is no one else in your category. You have become sovereign of a kingdom of one. And ironically, the moment you stop trying to compete, the world declares you the winner of the race. The winning season finds you because you have finally become a safe harbor for success. Most people, if they were given their big win today, would lose it tomorrow. Their internal structure is too weak. The underdog within them would sabotage the win because it doesn't fit the struggle narrative. But you have done the work. You have built the psychological pylons deep into the void. You have the metabolic authority to handle the pressure, the third eye to navigate the synchronicities, and the eternal now to stay focused. You aren't just getting a win, you are becoming the win. As you sit on this throne, you will notice that the high intensity of the struggle has been replaced by a high density of presence. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to hustle to be productive. You move with the slow, deliberate grace of a planet in orbit. You have reached the state that Jung called the unus mundus, where your inner world and the outer world are so perfectly aligned that your thoughts begin to manifest as events before you even have time to doubt them. This is the end of the journey and the beginning of the life you were born to live. The underdog is a memory. The fear is gold. The silence is power. Your winning season has found you. Not because you found it, but because you finally became a person who was too large for the losing season to contain. You didn't find the light. You became the sun, and the world has no choice but to rotate around you. Thank you for exploring the depths of the Jungian psyche with Carl Jung daily. If this deep dive into the mechanics of the winning season resonated with your soul, make sure to hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that this gold needs to be shared with others who are still in the lead phase. If you want to continue this journey of individuation and master the secrets of the shadow and the self, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We are building a community of sovereigns here, and your presence is a vital part of that mosaic. Comment below with the word sovereign if you have decided to execute the underdog today. Let us know which part of this transformation you are currently in, the void, the transmutation, or the temporal collapse. Your comments help us understand the collective psyche of this channel, and we read every single one.